Now I just couldn't resist doing another video, a slow cooker video in honor of Crocktober. So today I am cooking from Slow Pot Cookery. This is a Women's Circle home cooking booklet, and it is from 1980. It says winter 1980. So, you know, I'm a little ahead of myself on seasons. Women's Circle was a magazine, and they also produced these little booklets with recipes in them. I believe they existed from like the 70s to the 90s. So we're kind of like right, right smack dab in the middle of their lifespan. It says choice selected, reader tested recipes ready to go into your crockery cooker. So these are crowdsourced recipes. People actually sent these in, and I'm really excited to try the 3 recipes that I selected for today. All right, folks, we have a slow cooker soup today. I saw this turkey-zucchini soup right off the bat. I am using chicken. I don't have cooked turkey, but I saw this and I thought, okay, it's got some nice vegetables. Okay, it's got some tomato sauce, and then, you know, chicken bouillon, and then you puree some of it with cream cheese. So I'm like, I feel like this is gonna be interesting and possibly delicious. Let's ignore the fact that it is almost 80 degrees on the day that I'm filming this, because I really want it to be cozy soup season, slow cooker season. We're just gonna go with it. We're gonna go with it. I love soup all year round anyway, and I thought this one just, I don't know, something about it is really intriguing to me. The combination of vegetables that they use, the fact that you add cream cheese to it, but you also puree it probably to thicken it a little bit. It's a little different than any of the soups that I've seen from this time period. So I really wanted to try it. And I am gonna make the full recipe of this soup. And like I said, I've got pre-cooked shredded chicken here, but I think this would be an excellent way to use leftover holiday turkey if it does turn out. Okay, so what do? I thawed my green beans. I have 8 ounces of green beans here that were previously frozen, but you just run some hot water over them. The recipe called for cut green beans. I had whole green beans that I just kind of like chopped. So let's put those in. And next I have 2 cups of zucchini. I did make a bit of a call here. It called for sliced zucchini, but because this is a soup, I cut them into like little wedges. Here, I'll show you. Because this really needs to go on your spoon. And even though I used fairly small zucchini, whole round zucchini slice is gonna be a little bit difficult to eat in a soup, I think. That was my call. It's the same amount of zucchini, it's just slightly smaller pieces. I have 2 cups of cooked shredded chicken here. This was from a rotisserie chicken, and I shredded it and put it in my freezer. Usually that's what I do, especially if I can find a rotisserie chicken on sale. I'll grab it. Even if I don't have a plan for it, I'll grab it, I'll shred it up, and then freeze it in like freezer bags and use it for something later. You know, I didn't get anything to stir with. One moment. We'll go with this. I get a lot of questions about this spoon with my name on it. This was from a good friend she used to live in Germany, and she picked this up for me at a Christmas market, and I love using it on my channel. So people ask about it, that's where it came from. 8 ounces of tomato sauce. So, you know, we've got a tomato element here. I need a little spatula too. I'm filming this on a Monday, and I feel like it really shows because I wasn't quite as prepared as I normally am. All right, so I need to add that. And not to worry, I will be rinsing this little can out with some of the water. Make sure I get all my tomato sauce in there. I have 1/2 cup of finely chopped onion. Use the spatula there too. I have a tablespoon of chicken bouillon granules, a teaspoon of Lee and Perrins. I think that's gonna give it a very savory flavor. I have a few seasonings. 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper. And then it also called for 1/2 teaspoon of savory. I don't have savory, so I looked up a substitute and it said thyme was a really good one. So maybe the flavor is going to be slightly different. I just didn't want to have a lot of herbs and spices in my cabinet. So if I can make a substitution, sometimes that's what I do. My 4 cups of water that I've measured out here, but I'm going to pour a little bit into this can and kind of like swish it around before I add the rest. You know, just to rinse out the can. This looks pretty good. I'm gonna stir it just to make sure that the bouillon granules kind of get in there. So right now, you know, it's looking pretty soupy, but later after it cooks, I need to take some of the soup out and puree it with some cream cheese. I think that is going to thicken it up a little. Okay, we need to cover it. I need to cover it. My lid's over here. Cook on high for 2 to 3 hours. All right, high. You know, I'm gonna set it for the whole 3 and I'll check it in about 2, but I definitely want the vegetables to be soft. We'll check it in about 2 hours, but I am gonna just set it for the full 3 and see kind of like how it goes. So this is what it's looking like 2.5 hours in. I just uncovered it and I tasted the zucchini and a green bean because I wanted to see, you know, what they were like. And they are tender without being absolute mush, which is kind of what I was going for. So now I'm gonna move on to the part where I puree this a little bit. I'm going to do this in a 4-cup measuring cup just because I think it's gonna be easier. I'm gonna be using my immersion blender. You can, of course, like if you wanna put this in a regular blender and do it, you can do that. I just thought my immersion blender would be a little bit easier. I mean, of course, when this was made, there's a good chance that they would have done this in a regular blender. Okay, so it says, hold on, my book's not next to me. Blend about 1 cup of hot soup liquid into cream cheese and return to cooker, stirring well, and then you let it heat through. So I'm gonna measure out about 1 cup of this, maybe a little bit more. And I have 3 ounces of cream cheese. I just cut this like into cubes kinda, and I've been letting it soften. Let the soup kind of do its magic. Melt that cream cheese a little bit before I blend it. Let's try it. All right, I think that's sufficiently blended. So we're gonna take that off and add that right back into the soup. It's still pretty warm, so I'm gonna hold it that way. Yeah, I've made soups where you like take some out and puree to thicken, especially like a potato soup. That's something that's, I feel, pretty common. To me, the combination, so this was 1980, the combination of adding cream cheese and pureeing it, that's not personally something I see a lot in slow cooker recipes from this time. I do look at a lot of cookbooks. I do look at a lot of slow cooker recipes. I'm just gonna let this heat through for a couple of minutes and then I'm gonna give it a try. I'm excited to try this. It's kind of different than other soups that I've made in the slow cooker, other soups that I've made in general, really. So let's just go for it. Ooh, that's good. So the cream cheese is not like overdone. It just gives it a slight amount of creaminess. I like the texture of the vegetables. Like I said, they're not like super, super soft. They're tender. Yeah, that's such a good flavor. I think there are, like this is pretty dang good as is. There are 2 additions that maybe I would like to see. Kind of like a shell pasta or something in there. I think this soup would be really good with some kind of like little tiny pasta in it. And then I was thinking like maybe fire roasted diced tomatoes, maybe. It's pretty good without that stuff though. So you could make this recipe as is. I think you'd be pretty happy with it. Maybe serve it with some nice crusty bread or some crackers, something like that. I spotted this cereal nut scramble recipe and I thought it would be a really nice snack to take to an upcoming movie night that I'm going to. And cereal nut scramble is Chex Mix. It's the more commonly known as Chex Mix, I think. This one, you know, it's got your cereal, pretzel sticks, peanuts, seasonings, butter. I know a lot of people like to add other things to their Chex Mix too. There's a lot of things you can add or leave out. I'm keeping it pretty simple here. I've never made Chex Mix in a slow cooker. I've made it in the oven. That's usually how we do it. I swear I see a Chex Mix recipe every time I look at a slow cooker cookbook, and like this time I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's try it. And I'm making a full batch of this recipe, so I got out my big slow cooker. I believe this is a 6-quart. A similar model is available, but not this exact one. I actually like this one so much that I recently replaced the insert. I ordered it when it finally came back in stock because I just really like this one. I don't know, it's got the buttons, you know, I don't know. I just like it. I didn't want to throw it away. Its time was not up with me yet. So I got to call out a substitution I'm making. This recipe calls for 2 cups of wheat squares or wheat checks and 2 cups of corn squares. I don't love the wheat ones. I don't love the wheat checks. If I get Chex Mix or like make it or whatever with wheat squares, that's like the last thing to go in the bowl. So I'm making the Chex Mix of my dreams and I'm using Crispex right here. Crispex are a different shape, 6-sided. You probably can't even see that. Hold on. Let's see if it'll actually focus on this tiny little piece of cereal. And they're corn on one side and rice on the other. I was like, let's just go with just one of the cereals. So I have 4 cups of Crispex here. As I said, the Chex Mix of my dreams. 2 cups of pretzel sticks. And then 1 cup of roasted peanuts. All right, I'm just gonna give that a little bit of a mix. Gently, I don't wanna break everything up. Next comes our butter and seasonings. I actually have to microwave together this 1/2 cup of butter, I have a tablespoon of Leon parents, and I have a half teaspoon of seasoned salt and a quarter teaspoon of garlic salt. So I'm just gonna combine that in a glass measuring cup. I'm gonna pop this in the microwave until the butter melts. Okay, I've got my mixture here, straight from the microwave. I just need to pour this over. This is where a glass measuring cup really comes in handy. Oh gosh, it smells really good. And I just need to toss this lightly, it says. All right, what now? Well, I gotta plug my slow cooker in. That helps. Cover and cook on low setting for 3 to 4 hours. So I'm gonna cover it. And then low setting. This has like a nice timer on it. So I've got it on low, I've set it for 3 hours. And then it says when 3 hours are up, I need to uncover this and like let it cook for about a half an hour longer uncovered. All right, I have my little bowl of snack mix here. What did they call it? They had a special name for it. Cereal Nut Scramble Chex Mix. Or Crispex, that's what I used. Thoughts about this before I try it. The recipe didn't say to stir anything, and I kind of knew better. Knew better than to trust that. And because with this type of recipe, like if you let it sit on the bottom, it's gonna burn if it just like sits there the whole time and you walk away from it. You know, I checked it about 45 minutes in, gave it a stir, same thing at like an hour and a half. I ended up not cooking this for the full 3 hours, just because it was getting really, really toasted and I didn't want it to go to the point of burning. So what I did is I cooked it for like between an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes on low. I took the lid off and I bumped the heat down to warm, let it go another half an hour. So I did modify the time just a little bit. One of the things I like to do when I am making a vintage slow cooker recipe, this one is from 1980. I do like to check recipes for like the same thing basically that are made now, just to compare times, temperatures, things like that. Slow cookers from the past, not quite the same as slow cookers now. I would say with this one, maybe the proportions of cereal were a little different. So I put this in a bowl for the thumbnail. I put some like extra cereal on top, but if you look at the whole thing, I spread it out on a tray so that it would cool a little bit. I would kind of like to have less pretzels, I think. I want more cereal. So what I think I would do if I were to follow this recipe again is I would reduce the number of pretzels and sub in some Crispex. Like another, I think it was what, 2 cups of pretzels? I do 1 cup of pretzels and an extra cup of Crispex. It smells really good though. That familiar like buttery, savory smell of making homemade Chex Mix. So let me try, I'm gonna try one of each thing. So I've got the cereal here. Very familiar flavor. I like how buttery it is. Let me try another piece. That piece was a little more salty. I'm gonna try a pretzel. I did get a lot of butter in that bite too. And peanut. That's nice. Yeah, I mean, it tastes like Chex Mix, like a traditional homemade Chex Mix. I feel like the butter is like really amped up in this one. I think it's like, it has to do with the proportion of other ingredients. A lot of the other recipes I was looking at, you need like 9 to 10 cups of cereal. This is very nice. It is not like the Chex Mix that you buy in the store. So if that's what you're looking for, this is not quite that. This is more of a buttery homemade flavor. For my final recipe, I'm gonna be making a hamburger casserole. And like, look at this guy. Isn't that a cute sketch? But yeah, hamburger casserole, that's the one I'm making. This is a pretty classic looking casserole recipe that is layered. So I have to layer the ingredients in the order that they appear. And I'm gonna attempt to make this in my 2-quart slow cooker because I'm cutting the recipe in half. So the bottom layer is potato. I just had some tiny little yellow potatoes. I left the skins on. They're so thin, usually they cook, you know, pretty easily. Just, you know, kind of approximated the number of tiny potatoes into one. I also have some carrots. It just says carrots, 3 carrots cut small. So this is about a carrot and a half cut into a dice. Drained whole kernel corn. You could use frozen corn. This is canned corn. And I'm just kind of like making sure that everything gets in there and is like spread out since we're doing like a layered thing. And good old celery. Good old celery. You know it. You love it. So we got some nice veggies going. We got some nice veggies in here. I have a diced onion. I think this is gonna fit just fine. I have 3/4 pound of ground beef that I have browned. It did not come out. I put this in the fridge while I was doing something else. So I gotta encourage it in there a little bit. There it is. And the final ingredient before I actually start cooking, I have half a can of tomato soup and half a can of water. So, you know, you would use a full can if you're doing the full recipe. I went ahead, I just mixed the tomato soup in the water because, you know, it's gonna form kind of a sauce. This is your cooking liquid, so I think that was probably fine. As for the other half of tomato soup, the other half can, you can either freeze that or, you know, make it for yourself for lunch and have it with a sandwich. That's what I usually do. It's one of those two things. So now I have to cook this on low for 6 to 8 hours. I am gonna keep an eye on it because, as I mentioned earlier in this video, the slow cookers we have now are different than the slow cookers we had in 1980. The temperature kind of varies a little bit differently. So we'll see how long it actually takes. 6 hours. I went 6 hours on low with this. And the potatoes are cooked, the onions, celery, all of the vegetables are cooked. It smells very good. The smell was very familiar, like all day. I was just like, wow, what is that? Like, why do I know that? It's because my mom used to make vegetable soup, sort of like this. I think I have 1 or 2 recipes on this channel for like a hamburger soup that was very similar to what she made. This is almost like a stew version because it's a little or a lot less brothy, but a lot of the components are there. The hamburger, you know, the carrots, celery, onions, potatoes. The only other things I can think of that we would have probably added would be green beans and peas. But yeah, otherwise super similar. Now I did mix this together and taste it because I was like, there's no extra salt or pepper in this. The only salt really would have come from the tomato soup and the corn, you know, so not a lot. And it did need some seasoning. So I went ahead and I added some seasoned salt and some cracked pepper, but I'm gonna taste it again on camera. It did need that seasoning, by the way. In my opinion, it needed that seasoning. Very hearty fall vegetable kind of thing. This has like what I would say is a slightly sweeter flavor, probably because of the tomato soup. You know, if you don't like that sweetness, you could probably go like tomato sauce or even diced tomatoes and juice, something like that. But this is truly an all-in-one meal. You've got your beef and the potatoes, and then you have corn, carrots, celery, onion. You don't really need anything else. I might serve this with a little bread. It's not soupy. It's like a thicker, kind of like a stew. You know, there's not a lot of liquid in it, but it has a lot of those familiar to me flavors as the vegetable soup my mom used to make growing up. Slow Pot Cookery was published in 1980, and it's part of the Women's Circle home cooking booklet, magazine, what have you. There was a Women's Circle magazine, like a big magazine. I was able to find a few issues of that on eBay. I found magazines, Women's Circle magazines up through the 90s, like the early 90s. I did find some Women's Circle compilation cookbooks through 2001. So, you know, I'm not sure exactly when this magazine ceased publication. It looked like the 70s through the 90s, sort of like that. Maybe they continued to put together cookbooks in the early 2000s using recipes from, you know, previous magazines. So on the cover we have, I think it's apples and cabbage. Red cabbage and apples, yes. This is a winter issue. Sorry, I'm trying to avoid that glare for you. This is a winter issue, so that does seem like a very wintry kind of dish. It says choice selected reader tested recipes ready to go into your crockery cooker. So the recipes in these little booklets, they were reader submitted. People would send in their best recipes and share them. And, you know, I don't know if they got something for publishing. Maybe they got a free magazine or maybe a free subscription or maybe a little bit of money or something like that. Or just the fame and fortune of having your best recipe published in Slow Pot Cookery. The original price on this was 75 cents. I think I paid 50 cents. The inside is kind of like a newsprint style paper. And just from the looks of the regular full-sized magazine, it looked like that was also this kind of like newsprint, glossy cover, newsprint inside. No photos of the food, but we have a lot of clip art, I think. There's not really a consistent style of illustrations, which that's what makes me think it's just like clip art, which no shade to clip art. I love looking at some good old clip art. They do have like this sort of introduction at the beginning of each section of the book. Let me see if I can find another one. That one was Sweeten the Pot. This one says beverages. So they do have sort of like an introductory drawing, but there are no pictures of the food. Oh my gosh, look at that. My dad used to put together the newsletter for the KFC group that he was in, and I remember him using these like clip art booklets. That's what that reminds me of. Let me find some other good ones. There's some like good Christmas ones in here. There's that one. See, like there's not really, a lot of times in regular cookbooks you can see a little bit more consistency across illustrations. If they're like drawings or something, you know, maybe they use one artist. This, I feel like they maybe just like kind of got it out of a book, which is okay. It's still fun to look at. Oh wow, friendly fondues with like a little Christmas ornament. It says winter 1980, but there's a lot of Christmas imagery in this in this book. So I think this was probably published in like, I don't know, November, maybe December. There's a lot of advertising in the book for other publications from the same publisher for like Christmas crafts and things. Christmas confections, Christmas cooking special, Christmas party fair, Christmas cakes, Christmas cookies. I actually did find another booklet from Women's Circle Home Cooking in my collection that I didn't really know I had. I just assembled some new bookshelves and I'm kind of like overhauling how I'm doing things. And so I'm, you know, trying to reorganize a little bit, and I just came across another Women's Circle booklet. So maybe I'll cook from that one too. Did anyone who's watching ever submit a recipe to this? Because I would love to hear about that. Every recipe is attributed to someone that sent it. But let's talk about the recipes I tried today. I started with turkey-zucchini soup. And yes, I used chicken. I usually sub in chicken if I don't have like leftover turkey or I haven't like cooked a turkey or anything like that. And it worked beautifully. It worked beautifully. This soup was really good, like very tasty. I thought the combination of ingredients was pretty interesting. Just reading through the ingredient list and then after cooking the recipe itself, it does seem to me like the person who submitted this maybe had some things they wanted to use up or had some things left over and they were just like, what do I have? I have zucchini, I have turkey, this, that, let's make a soup. And it worked. It worked. I really liked this one. I mentioned that I don't often see the combination of adding cream cheese to a soup and pureeing some of the soup to thicken it during these time periods. Yes, it's a very common thing that I think we do now. And even in the past, I think like pureeing a little bit of soup to thicken the rest of it, like you would occasionally see that, but like the combination of the cream cheese and then pureeing it and all of that, like I see it now. I don't see it a lot in cookbooks from the past because I look at a lot of vintage cookbooks. So that was kind of a surprise, a pleasant surprise. It worked really well. You only use 3 ounces of cream cheese. 3-ounce packages of cream cheese used to be very common. I even remember seeing them a lot growing up. I kind of like used to see them in our regular grocery stores up until a few years ago. They're maybe still available, but like where I'm shopping, they're just not selling those little packages of cream cheese. But as far as I know, that used to be like a very go-to kind of size. That's in a lot of recipes that I find in my books. I thought the soup was really delicious, like just as it was, you know, like making it straight through with just the listed ingredients, that was really good. It did get me thinking about some other things that I think would also be nice additions, one of them being small pasta and maybe some diced tomatoes. Fire roasted diced tomatoes would add a really nice flavor to this. But if you don't have those things, like just make this recipe, make it straight through, and it tastes very good and it reheated really well. A lot of times soups are even better the next day, and I think that was the case with this one. My second recipe was cereal nut scramble, otherwise known as Chex Mix, or I used Crispix because I like the shape of it. I like that it's rice and it's corn. I don't particularly love wheat Chex. I wasn't excited about buying an entire box of them and only using 2 cups of it and then having all these wheat Chex to contend with that I didn't want to eat. I left those out and I just did 4 cups of Crispix in this. I was trying this more to see if I wanted to make Chex Mix in a slow cooker than I was like to try this actual recipe, because I've only ever made Chex Mix in the oven. You know, making it in a slow cooker is not a bad idea, especially if you're having a craving for something like this during the summer and you don't want to turn your oven on. Then yes, I think a slow cooker is a wonderful option to make something like this. As for this particular recipe, it was incredibly buttery. That's not a bad thing, is it? I don't think so, but it led with butter. You didn't taste the seasoning as much because it was so buttery. I think the proportions of like the cereal, it was different than a lot of the recipes, like the modern recipes that I was seeing for slow cooker Chex Mix. It seemed like there was a lot more cereal, like maybe by, I don't know, an extra 2 to 3 cups even than like what was in this recipe. You could play with the proportions here. You could take your favorite recipe that you make in the oven for Chex Mix, like, and you could adapt it to a slow cooker. Like I said, it was more about seeing like, how will this turn out in a slow cooker? Is it going to be the same as an oven? Is it easier? Is it better? Whatever. You know, I think cooking this in a slow cooker definitely has its place. My final recipe was hamburger casserole. And this is like a classic layered casserole, you know? It was cooked with like the potatoes on the bottom and then you'd work your way up. Really delicious. It really was. If you like casseroles, of course. This was truly an all-in-one meal because it has like your vegetables, it has a starch, it has, you know, your meat, your protein. You can just serve this by itself, you know? I said add some bread. I just like bread. Who doesn't love bread? But, you know, if you just had this and you wanted to serve it by itself, or maybe you wanted to reheat it, take it with you for lunch, you know, to work or wherever, it reheated really well in the microwave and it tasted just as good the next day. I kept comparing it to my mom's vegetable soup because it had so many of the same ingredients and flavors. As I was eating this for lunch, the other thing that it made me think of was tater tot casserole. Now, I think that there are a couple of different camps when it comes to tater tot casserole. One camp is, you know, the mixed vegetables and the ground beef mixed with a tomato base, like tomato soup, tomato sauce, something like that. And the other is kind of the same thing, except instead of tomato soup or tomato sauce, it's cream soup. This one really reminded me of the like tomato soup ground beef mixed vegetable base that you would use for a tater tot casserole. And I almost think you could make sort of like a deconstructed tater tot casserole bowl if you wanted to bake some tater tots and like sprinkle them on the top. It would go really well with this. I thought this one was really good, and it was one of the recipes that you could leave in the slow cooker for a longer amount of time. I went pretty minimal. I like went on the lower end of the time listed at 6 hours. I probably could have left it in for longer. Everything was cooked when I tried it. If I had left it in for a couple of hours longer, the vegetables maybe would have been a little bit softer, but I don't think it would have made like a huge difference. So this is maybe one of those long haul kind of slow cooker recipes that you could have cooking for a while. So I hope you enjoyed this look at slow pot cookery from winter of 1980, and I hope it gave you some new ideas on what to cook in your slow cooker this season. Do you love slow cooker cookbooks and recipes? I have an entire playlist and I'll link it in the description down below. I'd like to say a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to join us over there, I'll have a link in the description so that you can do that. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I post videos about food, vintage cookbooks, and retro recipes every week. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.